Hello everyone. For sale today is an original IBM 5150 PC. Has the original keyboard, original floppies, as well as the original CGA monitor. This machine is actually a little special because it is the first version of the PC. It's the 64K motherboard, and it also has a sticker on the side of it which shows that it was serviced by IBM. So someone actually had a service contract on this machine, and I can't speak to its entire life, but it appears to have only ever been serviced by IBM up until the time I received it. When I first received this computer, it actually did have one different card in it than it has now. It did originally have a monochrome card. In fact, it had a Tecmar Graphics Master, which I believe Tecmar built most of the original peripheral cards for the original PC. Unfortunately, that card should support CGA. I tried to rejumper it, and I had this CGA monitor that's for the original PC separate, and I wanted to include that with this bundle, but I could not get it to sync on this monitor for some reason. There's no manual for the Tecmar Graphics Master that I could find online. I did find the jumper settings, but unfortunately I did have to replace it. So I unfortunately do have an original IBM CGA card, the first version that they released. The only real downside to it is, if you know anything about the original PCs, most of the original peripheral cards had black tabs on the back, and unfortunately the tab on the back of the CGA card on this one is actually silver. So it probably came from a 5160, possibly, or maybe a later model 5150. But whatever the case, that's the only change I've made to it. That, and I've also added a low-tech IDE compact flash adapter. I've been selling quite a few of those, and I love those cards. They're exceptionally useful for old machines like this. So I put one of those in there, and it also has a 4 gig SanDisk flash card. It's already formatted with drive C and drive D on there. I put DOS 5 on it. I like to put DOS 5 on XTs because it gives you most of the better command set, but the command interpreter is smaller. And that is the other downside of this machine, is that it only has 320K of RAM. That has to do with the fact that it does have another Tecmar card in there, which is a Tecmar 256K clock, parallel and serial board. I did replace the battery on the real-time clock, but I don't have the software to set the time on it, so I'm sure you'll have to find that somewhere, but I'm sure it's out there. I just never bothered looking for it. It should work fine, I'm sure. I've never seen a real-time clock fail once it has a good battery. But that board, since it only has 256K of RAM and the onboard memory is only 64K, that brings this machine to a total of 320, or half of the max it could have for DOS, which is unfortunate. But I decided not to modify it. In order to do that, I'd have to take that Tecmar card out, and since I already took one of them out, I didn't really want to take the second one out as well. So again, just to try to keep it as original as possible, I left that in there. It also has the original black tabbed floppy controller, which is connected up, and that's the other bad news about this machine, is that the 2 floppy drives do not work. I've actually spent some time trying to work on them. The drive A, which is the drive on this side, was working. I was actually able to get it to work, but it seems like the stepper motor might have a problem. We lubed everything and cleaned it, which you have to do with these old drives generally before you ever use them, clean the heads. Right off the bat, I was able to get the formatted disk. It read the disk, no problem. I turned the machine off for about 2 days, and I came back, and the stepper motor had failed to seek again, back to track 0. So I took it apart, cleaned it again. Again, it worked for about 2 days, and then I left the machine off for a day or two, and once again, the drive's failing. Drive B, this other drive, does not seem to work either. That one I never could get to read or write a disk. I actually got it to read a little bit, but I think it might have an alignment issue, and I don't have a proper alignment disk, and I've sold my oscilloscope, unfortunately, and the only one I have is a digital one. I don't recommend those USB oscilloscopes, by the way. They're not that great. It's hard to read anything on them, but this drive, I think, is out of alignment, and drive A is failing the seek test. So unfortunately, when the machine comes on, it throws the error 601, which is a floppy controller failure, and that's happening because drive A is failing the seek test. I use some utilities to go into the drive and just try to advance the tracks manually, and it won't go past track 3. It'll go track 3 to 40, but it won't go back to 1 or 0. So it's got an issue there. So anyway, since it's got the low tech, you can take the card out, put it on another PC, and copy whatever software you want over there. I really left them in just to keep the look original, because these drives really are what came in this machine originally. One other thing to note, if you notice right here, this is actually the original ROM chip out of this machine. Not only is this the original PC, but it's the original ROM revision of the PC. And the original version doesn't support option ROM devices. And what that means in this case is the low-tech uses an option ROM to bypass the BIOS and boot up the compact flash adapter without changing the ROM chip. I wasn't actually able to get this one to boot. But I do want to include the ROM chips, since this is the original one. It's a U33 on the board. I have some photos on the eBay listing which show what the socketed ROM chip. I actually bought an adapter, I think it was from retrocomputing.com, which will allow you to put a 2764 EEPROM in there. I was able to program it with the second version of the ROM, which does support scanning for option ROMs. And that was able to get the machine to go ahead and see the low-tech adapter and boot on up. So let me go ahead and turn it on real quick. And when it first comes up, you'll notice that error 601. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in on the screen a little bit here just so you can see better what's going on. Okay. Takes a minute. It's old. There's scanning, there's error 601, and there's the low-tech. And it's booting. Alright, so I'll do a directory, and if you've played around with the low-techs before, sometimes when you put a 2 gig partition on these old machines, it actually takes it quite a while to synchronize or find out how much free space there is on the disk. That's why it takes a little while for it to do this the first time. There we go. Yeah, so there's 2 gigs free, and there's actually a drive D on here as well, which I gotta make directory. I'll do a directory on that. And then it's gonna have to calculate the free space, but it's roughly 1.8 gigs on the second drive and 2 gigs on the first one. You stick that flash card in the machine, you should be able to see the partitions in it and copy files straight over there. So anyway, I did copy a few games over here, but with this machine only having 320K of RAM, it does limit pretty heavily what you can play. There are a few that work. In fact, some of the games I put in this directory are ones that I just, shareware ones and what have you that I distribute. Oh, I'm on the wrong drive. And, oops. Alright, so yeah, after you do a directory the second time, as long as you don't change how much free space there is, it'll come back pretty quickly. But like Jill of the Jungle's on there. I actually haven't even tried all of these. These generally work with older machines, but like I said, in this case, some of these games that I'm putting on here may not work with this. You may have to, put a different RAM board in temporarily. I just at least wanted to send it with this one. That way you have the original machine, because I just thought it was pretty cool that this one had been worked on by IBM Tech Center. And I didn't get the original monitor with it, but it obviously had a monochrome monitor to begin with. So I had to replace the card for that reason. But let me just go in and run Wheel of Fortune here. This one runs fairly well on this machine. Yeah, so anyway, it's an original PC, so it's pretty slow. It can... Alright. Anyway, you get the idea. Go ahead and spin the wheel a little bit. Alright, well, I'm going to redo it real quick. So it's unfortunate that it's throwing the seek error, but otherwise I've had this machine running. Oh, one other thing to mention I completely forgot. When I got this machine, it didn't work. If you're familiar with these old motherboards, one of the problems that the original PCs had is the tantalum capacitors. I think it's 10 microfarad capacitors that they used all over the motherboard for the RAM chips and pretty much for every decoupling capacitor and so forth that's all over the board, and I guess just a small storage capacitor. But capacitors tend to short out over time, and this machine, when I first received it, the power supply would lock up, so it was a classic sign of it having been frozen up. So I did replace all of the capacitors on the motherboard with electrolytic capacitors, and as soon as you get that done, as soon as I had completed that, the machine came right up right away, and I've had it running for a good month now, off and on, just playing around with it, making it work, and everything's been happy with it. So I'm getting it ready to sell now. I was going to try to fix the floppy drives, but these days it really seems like, you know, they're cosmetic. They're the original drives for this machine. They're both Tandon, I think TM104, if I remember the correct model number. I may be wrong about that, but they're both the Tandon drives that came with these machines originally and were in pretty much every old PC in the early 80s. They can probably be repaired if you are so inclined to do so, but like I said, with the low tech, most of the time it's a lot easier just to copy files right off your more modern PC and just move them manually over. I'm going to stop the video for a minute and I'm going to go ahead and show the back of the machine. I'm not going to open it up for the video because there should be quite a few pictures in the eBay listing that show the inside of the computer, show the low tech adapter and show all that, but I just want to show kind of what the back of the machine looks like. When I sell it, it will include the original ROM chip. We'll send that along with it. And also, when I have the video here, you'll notice that the badge for the IBM 5150 fell off the machine. It was loose. We're going to re-glue that on, so it's not on there at the moment, but I'm just trying to make sure I find some glue that's strong enough to keep that thing on there properly. Be right back. Okay, here's the rear of the machine. One other thing, which I mean, you guys have ever seen this cable. A lot of people didn't even know what these were, but there's an extra plug on the power supply, and actually have the proper cable for the 5153 CGA monitor here. You plug this guy in to the back of the power supply, and that way when you turn the computer on, you turn the monitor on as well, and then you only have one plug involved. This also has the original keyboard and cassette port, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here and see if I can get a shot of the low-tech card in the back. It's a little dark in my kitchen, sorry about that. So yeah, you see right there, there's actually a SanDisk card hanging out of the back of it. Let me try to lighten this up a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, I'll pull it out. There's a 4 gig SanDisk compact flash. It's actually plugged in the back of a slot here. Right next to that is a, I believe that's the parallel port. Yeah. Then there's an external floppy connector, the 50-pin connector, serial port. And then last is the CGA card, which you can also plug in a composite monitor into that guy. The serial port is what has the Tecmar board in it. And again, if you look at the back, it's part of the reason it's so dark back here. All of the tabs are black on the cards except for the CGA card and the low-tech adapter, which is just really a compact flash adapter that plugs into an IDE port. This is not the original card, but this card and the floppy card are original to the machine. And the last thing to show, which I think is just super cool, is over here on the other side. Here's the original service sticker. Unfortunately, it's kind of peeling off a little bit, but it does look like this machine had a service contract, which seems to have expired in 1984. This computer did not have a hard drive in it. It had the original floppies, had the original monochrome card and everything in it. So I have a feeling that they probably used it after their service contract until it died. Which is sometime when the tantalum capacitors fried in there, or maybe it just got shelved because it got too slow, and it just sat untouched for many years. And I bought it from an estate sale about 6 months ago, and I've just finally started getting around to working on it. The keyboard didn't come, actually did come with this machine. It was a little bit dirty, but we cleaned it up. There's a little bit of rust on the back, and there's actually a tiny rust spot here, but otherwise the machine, oh, I guess you can't see that. There's a tiny rust spot here on the side of the case. Otherwise, it's really pristine. The monitor's really good. It has a little bit of pen marking on it and some scratching and so forth. And I did remember it flickering one time, like it had like a little tick or something, but it's never done it again. I think it was just the tube kind of working out the cobwebs because it's been sitting for quite a while. But anyway, this machine will be up for sale here shortly. Comes with a low-tech adapter, the original ROM chip, 5153 monitor, 5150 PC, 320K of RAM, modified ROM chip to let it boot option ROMs because it is the original motherboard with 64K, and the original 84 key heavy steel keyboard. Last thing to note is this thing will probably have to ship in 2 boxes. I've shipped one of these before, and unfortunately the monitor got cracked. They're more fragile than they look. I know it's nice and solid looking plastic, but we're probably going to have to put the monitor in its own box and ship it separate from the machine and the keyboard. The computer's pretty resilient, it can make it, but the monitor needs kind of special care, so it's going to make the shipping a little bit more expensive, but I do want to make sure it gets to you intact. I hate killing these old monitors. They're hard to find that work as good as this one. Another thing to note too, last thing I can think of, sorry, I'm just thinking of all the miscellaneous stuff I can say about it. The CGA cards, if you have any experience with those old ones, have terrible refresh rates, and they flicker even in text mode sometime when you're going through just normal programs. That's actually not a fault with the card, that's just how they worked back in 1982. Newer CGA cards were better at the refresh rate, so this is an original card, so it has all the quirks of the original card. There should be some photos of it in the listing as well, of the cards that are inside the PC, so you can take a look and see. But you know, obviously anything that you can put in here that's 8 bits you can upgrade. You can easily slap a different memory board here and get it up to 640K pretty simply. I just wanted to leave all the original parts in it so you'd have them all, and if you wanted to modify it, at least you have them in your closet there and you could put it back to original anytime you wanted. Really the only addition to it that's not from the era is the low tech, and that's more of just a convenience factor than anything else. That would come out pretty easily as well if you wanted to put it back to an original PC and get the floppies working. Okay, well, I think I've said enough about it. Thanks for watching my video, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, it'll be on eBay under TexElec. And as always, thanks for watching.